Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another chapter for Midnight for Charlie Bone by Jenny Nimmo. And before I start this, man, I gotta say, today's a little exciting for me. I finally got to upload my first video of a Let's Play that I'm going to be doing. And I'm feeling way, way better. And if you've heard before, I was a little sick, so I didn't read as much as I'd liked. So, now that I'm feeling better, I'm gonna be continuing on. Here we go. As always, thank you guys for listening. And here we go. Chapter 7 Hypnotized. On Friday night, Grandma Bone marked Charlie's last 100 questions. He checked them very carefully with his uncle, and he was sure that all his answers were right. But Grandma Bone wore such a grim expression as she read Charlie's rather untidy handwriting, his heart began to sink. It was very hot in his grandmother's room, and Charlie had to stand beside a heater while Grandma Bones sat at a small table in front of him. Her skinny legs stretched under the table towards the heater, and Charlie couldn't help noticing that two bony toes had poked their way through the holes in her Fair Isle socks. He began to feel ill. At last, his grandmother placed a small, reluctant tick beside the last line on the last page. She looked up. "Your writing is a disgrace," she said. "But did I get the answers right?" "You did." And blew her nose. "Did you cheat?" "Cheat?" said Charlie. "No." "You don't seem very sure." "Of course I'm sure," said Charlie. I mean, I was supposed to look them up, wasn't I? Or use my computer? And I did. Here are 10 more questions. She handed him a sheet of paper. "You may sit at my table and answer them here where I can keep an eye on you. They're easy, so you won't need to look them up." "But that wasn't the deal," wailed Charlie. "It's not fair." "Life isn't fair," said Grandma Bone. She waltzed over to her large lumpy bed and lay back on the pillows. "Go on. The sooner you start, the sooner it'll be over." Charlie silently ground his teeth. All the questions were mathematical problems. He gave a low groan and began. The first two problems took him ages, but he had just begun to work out his third answer when he heard a snort from behind him. Grandma Bone had fallen asleep. Her mouth was wide open, and a deep grunting noise was coming from it. Charlie tiptoed to the door and opened it very quietly, and crept out into the passage. There was a tiny click as he closed the door, but Grandma Bone didn't wake up. Without bothering to put on a coat, Charlie sneaked out into the street and ran across to Benjamin's house. As he leapt up the steps, he could hear Runner Bean barking, and then 3 ear-splitting shrieks. Charlie rang the bell. He was aware of an eye on the other side of the spy hole, and then the door was opened. Charlie was amazed to see not Benjamin, but Mr. Onimus standing before him. "The very one," said Mr. Onimus with a little hop. "We've been waiting for you. Come on, come on." As Charlie stepped over the threshold, there was another furious bark. "Now then, Broadbean," called Mr. Onimus. "Be polite. My flames don't like rude dogs." He took little leaps down the passage until he reached the cellar door. Behind the door, Benjamin stood with his hand on Runner Bean's collar. Runner Bean kept lunging over the rickety steps. His growl had turned into an angry whine. Charlie soon saw why. At the bottom of the steps, Mr. Onimus's 3 cats were circling the metal case. Aries suddenly gave an eerie snarl and jumped on the case. Leo, his tail lashing, attacked the lock with his claws, while Sagittarius bit one of the clasps. "Come on, my flames," called Mr. Onimus. "You can do better than this. Show us what you're made of." The cats looked up at him, their strange eyes glittering, and then they did something extraordinary. They began to run around the silver case. Nose to tail, they formed a circle, and, as they ran the circle, brightened until it became a fierce light. Faster ran the blazing creatures, and soon there were no cats to be seen, but only flames crackling around the metal, licking, burning, scorching. The smell of burning filled the cellar, and Charlie and Benjamin began to cough. Runner Bean leapt away howling. It was no use. When the flames had died down, and the cats became cats again, the case remained locked. "You'll have to find the right key, Charlie," said Mr. Onimus. "Dr. Tully knew what he was doing when he sealed that case. Perhaps he meant it to stay locked forever." The three cats leapt up the fragile steps with ease. Charlie could feel the heat still crackling in their fur as they brushed against his leg. "They're a great comfort on a cold night," said Mr. Onimus. "Any chance of a coffee?" While they drank the rather strong coffee Benjamin had made, Mr. Onimus told Charlie that it was he who had put the case in the cellar in the first place. "I came in while young Benjamin was over at your place," said Mr. Onimus. "It was his birthday, I gather. Not much cake was left, was there?" "How did you get in?" Charlie asked suspiciously. "Benjamin's good mother let me in," said Mr. Onimus. "She'd just come home. Well, we'd seen this lady, me and the flames, this very dark lady with red boots, collecting old clothes. We knew she'd been at the door of number 12 pretty soon, asking for old clothes. Benjamin's mom would have opened the little cupboard and pounce. The red-booted lady would have seen the case. And Benjamin's mom, bless her, would have said, 'Take it, dear. It's rubbish for all I know.' And when she'd got it, well, that would be the end of it, wouldn't it? But it was me and the flames Mrs. B let into the cupboard. On the pretext of a mouse search, you understand. And while she was making me a nice cup of coffee, the flame suggested I tip the case into the cellar. See?" "How can cats suggest things?" asked Benjamin. "With their eyes, Ben," said Mr. Onimus. "And their mewing voices. And their swishing tails and clever claws." He stood up and, wiping his small hairy hands on his coat, he said, "Charlie, I want to wish you luck. It's not easy changing schools at the best of times, and Blower's Academy isn't an easy place. What you have to do will be difficult and dangerous. But remember, you've been chosen to rescue a life that's been stolen. What a grand way to begin a career!" He held out his paw-like hand. Charlie shook it. Benjamin asked, "Who chose him?" Before Mr. Onimus could reply, Charlie said, "Has it got something to do with the Red King?" "Everything," said Mr. Onimus. He wouldn't say another word, but hopped to the door and was away up the street. The two boys watched his small, fleet body disappearing round a bend, followed by the tail of burning bright cats. "We never asked him how he knew about the case in the first place," said Benjamin. "There's a lot I keep forgetting to ask Mr. Onimus," said Charlie. "He's the quickest person I've ever met. Dr. Tully's case was safe for now. But how long would it take the U-beams to get it? It would have to be moved to a safer place, somewhere they'd never think of looking." Charlie had an idea. "Fidelio Gunn!" he said aloud. "What's that?" said Benjamin. "A boy," said Charlie. "My music teacher. Come round on Sunday and you can meet him. Fidelio will help. I know he will." Benjamin looked doubtful. "We ought to find the key first." Charlie agreed. "We'll go first thing tomorrow." Grandma Bone had left the house to visit her sisters when Charlie got home. She didn't get back until very late, and so any unpleasantness about unanswered questions was avoided. Next morning, Macy was the only one up when Charlie crept downstairs. "You go and enjoy yourself, Charlie," she said, tucking a banana into his pocket. "Have as much fun as you can before it's too late." Charlie didn't think fun was the right word to describe what he would be doing. It felt too serious. But he didn't tell Macy. Benjamin was waiting outside number 12. He had left Runner Bean to guard the case. Miserable howls dogged them all the way up the street. "We won't be long, will we?" Benjamin said guiltily. Charlie wasn't sure. It was another cold, dark day. Now and again flurries of hail and sleet would beat into their faces, and they had to walk with heads bent to avoid the stinging slaps of ice. The crowds were thin, and the road approaching the cathedral almost deserted. But as they drew near Ingledew's, two figures emerged from the veil of sleet, boys about 16 or 17. They stopped when they saw Charlie and Benjamin and moved slightly apart, filling the narrow pavement. As Charlie stepped into the street to avoid them, one of them said, "Charlie Bone." Charlie shuddered. He'd heard that voice before. He looked up and recognized the boy who had glared out at him from the newspaper. Manfred Bloor. "Where are you going, Charlie Bone?" asked Manfred. "None of your business," said Charlie, sounding braver than he felt. "Oh, no." The other boy gave a high-pitched snigger. "It is my business," said Manfred. "But I know already. You're going to a bookshop called Ingledew's, where you'll beg Miss Ingledew to look for a key to a certain case that doesn't belong to you or her." Charlie said nothing. He leapt around Manfred and jumped onto the road, but Manfred's hand shot out and clamped itself around Charlie's arm. The other boy, a Weasley red-haired individual, grabbed hold of Benjamin. "I've got bad news for you, Charlie," Manfred said in a cold, toneless voice. "You won't be going to any bookshop, and you won't be getting a key. No one's going to open that case until it's handed over to me." "I don't know what you're talking about," said Charlie, trying to twist out of Manfred's grip. "We just want to buy a book," added Benjamin. "You won't find any kids' books at Ingledew's," said the red-haired boy. "Let go of me," shouted Charlie. "I can go where I want. You've got no right to stop me." He brought up his free hand and gave Manfred a blow on the ear, but the taller boy seized both Charlie's hands and, squeezing them tighter and tighter, forced him to the ground. "Look at me," Manfred commanded. Charlie looked. He couldn't help himself. "Look into my eyes," came the sinister whisper. Manfred's eyes were like shiny coals, black and fathomless. Charlie stared at them, repelled and fascinated. He felt himself sinking deeper and deeper, and now he was drowning, for he couldn't get his breath. The world outside Manfred's cold black eyes began to disappear, and Charlie found himself inside another world. Inside a car, to be precise. The car was traveling at a great speed through a forest, and Charlie appeared to be driving. The coal-black eyes were beside him now, and the sinister voice repeated, "Look at me." There was a sudden violent jolt, and Charlie was being dragged from the car. He knelt on the lip of a great pit while the car, a blue one, tumbled over the edge, and the silence of the forest was broken by the scream of birds, and then a far, far bellow came, a low, echoey splash. "Charlie! Charlie! Charlie opened his eyes and found himself sitting on the ground with his back against the lamppost. Benjamin was peering into his face. What happened to you? Benjamin asked in a frightened voice. I don't know, said Charlie. You kind of went to sleep, Benjamin told him. I've been shaking you for ages. Why did I go to sleep? Asked Charlie, feeling a bit foolish. It was when you looked into that boy's face, said Benjamin. I think he must have hypnotized you. Who? When? Charlie couldn't remember anything. What am I doing here? Oh, Charlie, Benjamin wrung his hands. You've forgotten everything. We were going to see Miss Ingledew to ask for a key, and then those two boys stepped in front of us, and one of them, the one with the ponytail, made you look into his eyes, and you went all funny and sleepy. Charlie began to remember. He shivered. The air was painfully cold, but the memory of Manfred's eyes was colder. Shall we go to the bookstore now? Said Benjamin. I don't feel well, Charlie muttered, staggering to his feet. Benjamin had never heard his friend say such a thing. Charlie was always well. Benjamin was worried. As the two friends walked home through the icy streets, Charlie began to murmur about driving through a forest in a blue car tumbling into a quarry. Benjamin thought Charlie was sleepwalking, or had gone quite mad. Nothing Charlie said made any sense until he suddenly stopped, and grabbing Benjamin's arms, he said, That's what happened to my father, Ben. He drove into a quarry. Really? Said Benjamin. I always wondered. In fact, sometimes I thought your father had just run away. No, said Charlie gravely. He was murdered. Benjamin didn't know what to say to this. Charlie's life had become not only rather complicated, but dangerous as well. They had reached Charlie's house by now, and Benjamin decided it would be best to let his friend have a rest. Besides, he could hear Runner Bean barking. He hoped he hadn't been barking for a whole hour. Let's talk about the case tomorrow, said Benjamin. I'll come round when you have your music lesson. Music lesson? Charlie looked puzzled. Fidelio Gunn? Benjamin said kindly. The color had begun to come back in Charlie's blanched face. Oh, yeah. See you tomorrow, Ben. Charlie dragged himself up the steps of number 9. It was quiet in the house. The smell of Macy's cooking drifted into the hall. But instead of making Charlie feel hungry, it just gave him a stomachache. He went upstairs and lay on his bed. This must be what people feel like after an operation, Charlie thought, as if they were not quite connected to the real world. Manfred had known who he was. But how? Charlie remembered the photograph, when he had looked at it and heard those voices. Aries the cat had peeped out and seen him. Somehow a connection had been made, even though 8 years had passed. Could it be that when he saw Manfred in the newspaper, Manfred had seen him too, and known who he was? Charlie decided to try an experiment. Somewhere he had a photograph of Benjamin. It had been taken on the same day as the photo of smiling Runner Bean. Charlie rummaged in a drawer and pulled out Benjamin's startled face. The camera flash had taken him by surprise. Charlie stared at his friend's face. For a moment, Benjamin just stared back, and then a voice said, Charlie, I don't like having my photo taken. In the background, a dog barked, and then Charlie's own voice could be heard, saying, Smile, Benjamin. Go on. You look great, really. That was it. No more voices. Just the sound of a dog panting heavily, and then a long, doggish yawn. At number 12, Benjamin had just opened a large pot of strawberry yogurt. He was about to plunge his spoon in when Charlie's face appeared, floating among the strawberries. It turned Benjamin's stomach over. He put the pot back in the fridge. "It's gone off," he told Runner Bean. "We'll have cheese instead." Runner Bean was glad to hear this. He wagged his tail happily. Charlie's mom woke him up for his lunch, but after that he fell asleep again. At tea time, Macy asked him if he felt ill, because he looked very peculiar, but he hadn't touched his sardines. "Not ill," said Charlie. "I think I've been hypnotized, Macy." I think I've been hypnotized. Macy and his mother laughed. "Grandma Bones on a warpath," said Macy. "She wanted to see you about some questions. But then she got a phone call and took off to visit the U-beams." After tea, Charlie fell asleep again. He didn't wake up until he heard his uncle creaking downstairs at midnight. Charlie tiptoed down to the kitchen. His head felt much clearer, and he was ravenously hungry. He found his uncle sitting at the kitchen table, eating cold chicken, prawns, and a salad. There was a basket of rolls on the table and a bottle of wine. Payne's large wine glass was half full. The only light in the room came from a single candle, sitting atop an ornate silver candlestick in the center of the table. Uncle Payne squinted past the candle flame. Eventually he saw Charlie hovering in the shadow by the door. "Come in, dear boy," said Uncle Payne. "Do you like chicken?" "Do I?" Charlie pulled up a chair. "Right now I'd eat almost anything." His uncle passed him a chicken leg on a plate and asked, "How was your day?" "Horrible." Charlie told Peyton about Miss Ingledew's keys, Manfred Bloor, and the nasty experience of being hypnotized. Uncle Peyton dropped his fork. "Do you mean to tell me that those boys were trying to prevent you from reaching the bookshop?" "That's exactly what I mean," said Charlie. "Manfred's going to get the key from Miss Ingledew before I can, and then he's going to come looking for the case. Everyone seems to be looking for it." "That dear lady needs protection," Peyton murmured. "Tell me, Charlie, why are you so determined to keep this troublesome case?" "Whatever is in it was swapped for a baby. I want to swap it back again so Miss Ingledew can see her niece. It doesn't seem fair, does it, that the baby's only relative can't find her? I wonder why it never occurred to the charming lady that she could have exchanged the case for the child," Peyton mused. "She's only just got it," Charlie said. "Before that she got tricked, fobbed off, lied to. By the time she'd got the case, she'd given up searching." "You do seem to know a lot," said Peyton. He took his empty plate to the sink. "Charlie, you're going to be out of action next week, so I shall return the keys to Miss Ingledew for you. If she finds the right one, I shall give it to you when you come home at the weekend. But I think you should show me the case. I want to be there when you open it, as a precaution." "A precaution?" asked Charlie. "Who knows what the thing contains," said Peyton. "An adult should be on hand, don't you agree?" "I suppose." Charlie was beginning to get a gnawing pain in his stomach again. This time it was because Peyton had mentioned his being away for a week, imprisoned in Bloor's academy. "Uncle Peyton, why do I have to go to Bloor's just because I'm endowed?" asked Charlie. "So they can keep an eye on you. They do not dare let you go anywhere else in case you start using your talents without their knowing it. They like to be in control." "I suppose you went to Bloor's?" Of course, said Peyton. And did you enjoy it? Enjoy is not the word I'd use. I got by. I kept my head down, and they left me alone, more or less. Peyton sighed. I suppose that's always been my trouble. I've kept my head down when occasionally I should have put it up. Ah, well, perhaps it's not too late. There was a creak outside. The door flew open with a bang, and the light came on. Grandma Bone stood on the threshold. She glared at Charlie, saying, "What's this? A midnight feast? Bet, Charles Bone. You'll finish those questions in the morning. School on Monday. How are you going to cope without sleep?" "Night, Grandma. Night, Uncle Peyton." Charlie scuttled past his grandmother. As he climbed the stairs, he could hear her shouting at Uncle Peyton. "What's going on here, Peyton? I can't trust you any more. Whose side are you on? Answer me." And that is the end of chapter 7. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And of course, I would love to know, if you haven't read these, what do you think's going on? What do you think's going to happen? And if you have read it, don't spoil, please. I mean, of course, this book is like old now, so I suppose everyone who's listening totally has heard the book. And if you haven't, well, I'm glad you're listening to me. As always, and once again, thank you very much for listening. Like and subscribe. And for more info, or if you guys want to talk about what's coming up or what you like, you can follow me on Twitter. I'll put everything in the description below. Thank you.